The morning started like any other on Kepler-4 for Tubi Jinho. Park was drinking his coffee in the colony administration building when the first alarm screamed across New Havana. He dropped his cup, watching it shatter on the floor as red warning. Lights flooded the room. "Sir, we have incoming ships," his assistant called from the communication desk. "Multiple contacts? Unknown configuration?" Ginho rushed to the main viewing window and felt his blood turn cold. Through the red-tinted atmosphere of their distant world, dark shapes were falling like deadly rain. The ships were massive, their hulls gleaming black against the crimson sky, and they moved with the purposeful grace of predators. "Sound the colony alert," Jinho ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. "Get everyone to the emergency stations." The first explosion hit the power station on the colony's eastern edge. The ground shook violently, and Jinho grabbed the wall to keep from falling. More explosions followed, each one closer than the last. Through the windows, he could see the alien ships landing in perfect formation, surrounding New Havana like a noose tightening around a throat. Hyejin Kim was in the mining sector when the attacks began. She had been checking the morning reports from the deep tunnels when the walls started shaking. Dust fell from the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear screaming. "Everyone stay calm," she shouted to the workers around her. "We need to get to the underground levels. Now." She helped guide families toward the reinforced tunnels that stretched deep into the planet's crust. These passages had been carved out over years of mining operations, creating a network of chambers and corridors that could shelter thousands of people. Parents carried crying children, while elderly colonists leaned on younger arms for support. "Move quickly, but don't run," Hyejin called out. "The tunnels are safe. We'll be protected down there." Above ground, the alien ships had finished landing. Soldiers in strange armor poured out, their weapons glowing with unfamiliar energy. They moved with military precision, setting up barriers and weapon positions around the colony's perimeter. Ginho managed to reach the main communication center just as the building shook from another explosion. The communication officer, a young woman named Myung, was frantically working at her station. "Sir, I'm trying to send a distress signal," she said, her fingers flying over the controls. "But they're jamming most of our frequencies." "Keep trying," Jinho said. "Use the deep space array. Send it on all emergency channels." He looked at the tactical display showing the alien positions. They had completely surrounded the colony, but they weren't advancing. They were waiting. For something? The answer came moments later. A voice echoed through the colony's speakers, the words translated by the computer into clear, cold language. "Humans of New Havana, you are surrounded by forces of the hegemony. Your weapons are primitive. Your defenses are weak. You have one choice: surrender now or face destruction." Jinho grabbed the microphone. "This is Colony Administrator Jinho Park. We are a peaceful mining settlement. We have families here, children. What do you want?" The alien voice replied without emotion. "You want to know what we want? We want you gone. Humanity spreads too far, too fast. You take worlds that should belong to superior species. Today, we make an example of you." In the tunnels below, 50,000 colonists had gathered in the main chamber. The space had been carved out years ago to store mining equipment, but now it held frightened families sitting on the cold stone floor. Emergency. Lights cast strange shadows on the walls, and the air smelled of fear and dust. Jin-Ho made his way down to address them. He looked out at the faces before him, miners with calloused hands, teachers who had come to educate the colony's children, engineers who had built their new home from nothing. They were all looking at him with the same question in their eyes. "What now?" "I know you're scared," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "I'm scared too, but I want you to know something. Before the communication systems were damaged, we managed to send a message to Earth. Help is coming." An older man in the crowd spoke up. "Earth is months away, even with the fastest ships. How long can we hold out?" Jinho felt the weight. Their hopes pressing down on him. "As long as it takes," he said. "These tunnels are strong. You have food supplies, water, and medical equipment. We're not helpless." A young mother holding her baby asked, "What if they break through?" What if they find us? Hai-Jin stepped forward. Then we fight, she said simply. We have mining equipment that can be turned into weapons. We have knowledge of these tunnels that they don't. We have something they don't understand. What's that? Someone asked. We're human, she replied. Don't give up. Above them, the alien commander was setting up his headquarters in the captured administration building. He looked at the tactical reports with satisfaction. The humans were trapped underground like frightened animals. Soon, they would realize the hopelessness of their situation and surrender. He had no idea that his message to Earth had been received. He had no idea that humanity was already preparing its response. The siege of New Havana had begun. But so had something else. Something that would change the galaxy forever. The days underground blurred, together like a nightmare that never ended. Jinho Park had stopped counting after the first month, but he knew it had been much longer. The mining tunnels that had once echoed with the sounds of drilling and machinery now hummed with the quiet. Desperation of 50,000 people trying to survive. The main chamber had become their town square. Families had claimed small spaces. Along the walls, hanging blankets and tarps to create tiny homes. Children played quietly in the corners, their laughter muffled and strange in the artificial light. The air recycling systems worked overtime, but everything still smelled of dust and too many people living too close together. Every morning at 8 o'clock, the alien commander's voice would boom through the colony's speakers, the words cold and mechanical after being translated by their computers. Humans of New Havana. This is your daily reminder that your situation is hopeless, your Earth is far away and cannot help you. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick and painless. Jinho had learned to ignore the broadcasts, but he could see the effect they had on the colonists. Some people would flinch when the voice started. Others would cover their children's ears. A few would just stare at the ceiling with empty eyes. As if they were already dead, Minho Lee had become the colony's military leader, though he had never wanted the job. Before the siege, he had been head of security, which mostly meant breaking up fights between drunk miners and making sure the equipment storage areas were locked at night. Now he was trying to turn ordinary people into soldiers. We don't have real weapons, he explained to a group of volunteers in one of the side tunnels. But we have tools. Mining lasers can cut through their armor. Explosive charges for breaking rock can break other things too. Sujin Nam was one of his best students. She had been a geology student before the attack, spending her days studying rock samples and dreaming of discovering new minerals. Now she crouched at the tunnel entrance with a modified mining laser, watching for any sign of alien movement above. They're getting bolder, she whispered to her partner, a middle-aged engineer named Kyung Min. Yesterday they came within 50 meters of entrance 3. Kyung Min nodded, adjusting his grip on the improvised weapon he carried. Minho thinks they're testing us, seeing how we react. The aliens had tried to break into the tunnels several times, but the colonists had fought them off each time. The battles were short and brutal. The aliens had better weapons and armor, but the humans knew the tunnels better. They could disappear into side passages and attack from unexpected angles. After each fight, the wounded were carried to Dr. Yoonji Song's medical station in the converted equipment bay. She worked with limited supplies, using mining equipment. To create makeshift medical tools, a rock crusher became a bone-setting device. A mineral analyzer became a diagnostic scanner. Hold still, she told a young man who had been hit by alien energy fire. The wound was clean but deep, and she had to use a welding torch to cauterize it. This will hurt, but it's better than infection. The young man, barely 18, gritted his teeth. Doc, do you really think help is coming? Dr. Song paused in her work. She had been asked this question hundreds of times, and her answer never changed. My grandmother lived through the Seoul siege during the war. She was trapped in a basement for 3 months with her family. Every day, the enemy told them that help wasn't coming. Every day they broadcast messages saying surrender was the only option. She resumed her work, her hands steady despite the poor lighting. But help did come. It always comes. That's what humans do. We don't abandon each other. The young man winced as she finished the treatment. What if this time is different? What if Earth really can't reach us? And we'll hold out until they can, she said simply. That's what humans do too. But privately, Dr. Song was worried. The medical supplies were running low. Food was being rationed more strictly each week. The air recycling systems were working at maximum capacity. And some of the older units were starting to fail. Worse than the physical problems were the mental ones. People were starting to crack under the pressure. There had been 3 suicide attempts in the past week. Families were fighting over food in space. Some colonists were beginning to whisper that maybe surrender wasn't such a bad idea. Ginho held daily meetings with his senior staff in a small storage room that had become their command center. The walls were covered with hand-drawn maps of the tunnel system and lists of supplies and personnel. We're down to 60% on food stores, reported the supply coordinator. If we cut rations again, people will start getting sick. The aliens hit Entrance 7 yesterday, Minho added. They're definitely probing for weak points. I think they're planning a major assault soon. Ginho studied the maps, looking for options he knew weren't there. What about the deep mining shafts? Could we expand into those areas? Maybe, Hajin said, but it would take weeks, and we'd need equipment that's still on the surface. Outside, the alien commander was growing impatient. His forces had been ordered to take the colony quickly and move on to other targets. But these humans refused to surrender, even when their situation was clearly hopeless. He decided to increase the pressure. Instead of 1 broadcast per day, he would make it 3. Instead of small probing attacks, he would begin larger assaults. These creatures would learn that resistance was futile. But in the tunnels below, something else was happening. The colonists were adapting, growing stronger despite their circumstances. They were becoming something the aliens had never encountered. Before a cornered enemy with nothing left to lose, it was during the evening meal when everything changed. Jinho Park was standing in the main chamber, speaking to the gathered colonists as he did every night. The routine had become important. It gave people something to hold on to when everything else seemed hopeless. Tonight I want to tell you about the London Blitz, he said, his voice carrying through the cavern. For 8 months, enemy planes bombed London every night. The people could have given up. They could have fled. Instead, they went underground, just like us. They waited, and they survived. The colonists listened quietly, their faces lit by the harsh emergency lighting. Children sat close to their parents, and the elderly leaned against the stone walls. Everyone looked tired, but they still listened. These stories had become their lifeline. During the siege of Leningrad, people were trapped for almost 3 years, Jinho continued. They ate anything they could find. They burned furniture to stay warm. But they never surrendered. And when the Mars colony uprising happened 50 years ago, the colonists held out for 6 months against impossible odds. He was about to continue when Dong Min Ka burst into the chamber. The young sensor technician was running, his face flushed with excitement and fear. "Sir!" he gasped, trying to catch his breath. "You need to see this. The long-range sensors are picking up something." Jinho felt his heart skip. What kind of something? Energy signatures? Multiple contacts approaching the outer system. Readings are ... massive. The chamber fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Even the children seemed to sense that something important was happening. Jinho followed Dongmin to the sensor station. A collection of mining equipment that had been modified to detect ships in space. The young technician's hands shook as he adjusted the controls. "Here," he said, pointing to the display. "These readings started appearing an hour ago. At first I thought it was an error, but they're getting stronger." Ginho stared at the screen. He wasn't an expert on sensor readings, but even he could see that something big was approaching their system. It's very big. "How many ships?" he asked. "I can't tell exactly," Dongmin replied. "The displacement readings are off the charts. Either it's the biggest fleet I've ever seen, or ... or what. Or these are ships bigger than anything in our databases." Word spread through the tunnels like wildfire. People gathered around the sensor station, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious readings. Some dared to hope that it might be rescue from Earth. Others worried that it might be more enemy ships. Above ground, the alien commander was having his own problems. His sensor operators had detected the approaching fleet as well, and they were clearly nervous. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "the energy signatures don't match any known ship configurations. The displacement readings suggest vessels of enormous size." The alien commander studied the data with growing concern. His forces had been expecting reinforcements, but these readings didn't match anything in the hegemony fleet. The ships were too big, too powerful, and they were approaching too fast. "Send a message to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Request immediate identification of the approaching vessels." But the response from his superiors was not what he expected. Instead of confirmation that help was coming, he received urgent orders to prepare for possible combat against an unknown enemy. The alien broadcasts to the colony changed immediately. Instead of the usual taunts about surrender, the messages became desperate demands. "Humans of New Havana," the translated voice boomed through the speakers, "you will surrender immediately. Our reinforcements are arriving, and they will show no mercy to those who resist." But in the tunnels below, Sujin Nam was listening to intercepted alien communications with a smile on her face. She had learned to understand some of their language during the long siege, and what she was hearing made her heart race with excitement. "They're not talking about reinforcements," she whispered to her squad. "They're talking about preparing defenses. They're scared of whatever's coming." Minho Lee joined the group around the communication equipment. "Are you sure?" he asked. Su-Jin nodded. "Listen to the tone of their voices. These aren't soldiers getting ready to win a battle. These are soldiers getting ready to run." The alien commander's final ultimatum came just before dawn. His voice was different this time. There was an edge of panic that the translation software couldn't hide. "Surrender now. Humans or face total annihilation when our reinforcements arrive. You have 1 hour to decide." But the colonists were no longer listening to his threats. They were watching the sensor readings as dozens of massive energy signatures dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system. Whatever was coming was bigger than anything they had ever imagined. Dr. Yoonji Song was treating a patient when the news reached her medical station. "Doctor," a young nurse whispered, "they're saying Earth has come for us." Dr. Song looked up from her work. "Are you certain? The energy signatures are human?" "Our computers recognize the engine patterns." For the first time in months, Dr. Song allowed herself to smile. "Then we were right to wait," she said. "We were right to hold on." Above ground, the alien forces were frantically repositioning their ships. Their confident siege formation was breaking apart as they prepared for a battle they had never expected to fight. The storm was approaching, and everyone knew that when it arrived, nothing would ever be the same. The first thing the colonists saw was light. Not the harsh emergency lighting they had lived with for months, but brilliant white light that seemed to tear through the darkness itself. The entire tunnel system shook as something massive dropped out of hyperspace directly. Above their planet, Dongmin Ko was still at his sensor station when the readings went crazy. "Sir," he called to Ginho, his voice filled with wonder, "you need to see this. The ships, ... they're huge." Ginho rushed to the display and felt his breath catch in his throat. The screen showed dozens of massive vessels arranged in perfect formation above Kepler 44b. Each ship was larger than anything the colonists had ever seen, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive markings of Earth's military. "Is that really?" Jinho whispered. "Earth Defense Force," Dongmin confirmed, tears streaming down his face. "They came for us. They actually came." Above ground, the alien commander was staring at his own displays in disbelief. His confident siege force suddenly looked like toys compared to the human fleet that had appeared in his system. The largest human ship was 10 times the size of his flagship, and there were dozens of them. Then a voice cut through every communication channel in the system. It was clear, strong, and spoke with the authority of someone who had never doubted they would win. This is Admiral So Young Han of the Earth Defense Force. "You have attacked human civilians. You have besieged a peaceful colony. You have threatened the lives of 50,000 innocent people. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The alien commander tried to respond, but his words were lost in the chaos as his own officers began shouting reports. The human fleet was moving into attack formation with a speed and precision that spoke of years of training and experience.
Admiral.
The alien commander finally managed to say, "We are acting within our rights under hegemony law. These humans have violated our territory." Admiral Han's response was ice cold. "You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. After that, we will consider you hostile forces threatening human lives." In the tunnels below, the colonists could hear everything through their communication systems. The children had stopped playing and were listening with wide eyes. The adults held each other close, afraid to hope, but unable to stop themselves. "They really came," whispered an elderly woman who had been one of the first colonists to arrive on Kepler-4 for it to be. "Earth really came for us." The alien commander made his choice. Instead of withdrawing, he ordered his ships to attack. It was the last mistake he would ever make. The battle that followed was unlike anything the colonists had ever experienced. The ground shook with each exchange of fire between the fleets above. Dust fell from the tunnel ceilings, and the emergency lights flickered with each massive explosion. Minho Lee stood with his defenders at the tunnel entrances, their improvised weapons ready in case any aliens tried to escape to the surface. But as the battle raged above them, he found himself smiling. "Earth remembers her children," he said to Suji Nam, who stood beside him with tears in her eyes. "They crossed the galaxy to save us." The hegemony had always prided itself on superior technology and advanced weapons. Their ships were faster, their shields were stronger, and their energy weapons could destroy most enemies with a single shot. But they had never faced humanity in a real war. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, each ship coordinating perfectly with the others. When the aliens formed a defensive line, the humans scattered and attacked from 12 different directions. When the aliens tried to retreat, the humans were already waiting for them. Admiral Han commanded the battle from her flagship, the massive dreadnought, Indomitable. She had been planning this moment for months, ever since the distress call from New Havana had reached Earth. Every ship in her fleet had been chosen for this mission. Every captain had volunteered to make the long journey across the galaxy. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "All batteries, full power." The Indomitable's main guns spoke with a voice like thunder. The alien flagship, which had seemed so powerful when it was terrorizing the colonists, crumpled under the assault like paper in a fire. Dr. Yunji's song was in her medical station when the battle reached its peak. The entire tunnel system was shaking so violently that she had to hold on to the walls to keep from falling. But she wasn't afraid. For the first time in months, she felt hope. "They're not just fighting for us," she told her medical team. "They're fighting for the idea that no human should face this alone." The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of orbital combat that shook the planet and lit up the sky with explosions. The colonists huddled in their tunnels, listening to the sounds of their rescue playing out above them. When it was over, the silence was deafening. For months, they had lived with the constant threat of alien attack. Now suddenly there was nothing but quiet. Dong Min Ko was the first to confirm what everyone hoped. "All alien ships have been destroyed or have fled the system," he announced. "The Earth Defense Force has achieved complete victory." Jinho Park stood in the main chamber, looking at the faces of his people. They had survived. They had held out long enough for Earth to find them. "We can go home," he said quietly. "We can go back to the surface." And slowly, carefully, 50,000 colonists began to emerge from the darkness that had sheltered them for so long. The first breath of outside air tasted like freedom. Jinho Park climbed out of the tunnel entrance he had not seen for 3 months, legs shaking from the climb and the overwhelming emotion of the moment. Behind him, other colonists were emerging like people awakening from a long nightmare. But it was Sujin Nam who saw it first. The young woman who had transformed from a geology student into a tunnel fighter stopped climbing and looked up at the sky. Her mouth fell open, and tears began streaming down her face. "Look," she whispered, pointing upward. "Everyone look up." The entire sky was filled with light. The Earth Defense Force fleet hung in perfect formation above New Havana. their running lights creating a pattern that stretched from one horizon to the other. But this wasn't just any pattern. It was Earth's flag, projected in blue and white light against the alien stars. The banner was enormous, covering half the sky. Every ship in the fleet had positioned itself precisely to create the image, turning the entire heavens into a symbol of home. The blue field sparkled with the lights of hundreds of vessels, while the white stripes gleamed like promises made real. Dr. Yoonji Song was helping an elderly colonist to the surface when she saw the flag. She had to stop and lean against the tunnel entrance, overcome by the sight. Around her, children were emerging from the darkness, their faces pale from months underground. But now they were looking up in wonder, their eyes reflecting the light of Earth's colors. "Is that really our flag?" asked a little girl, tugging on her mother's sleeve. "Yes, sweetheart," her mother replied, picking her up so she could see better. "That's Earth's flag. It's home telling us we're safe now." The first rescue ship landed in the colony's central plaza, its engines kicking up dust from the abandoned buildings. The ramp lowered and Admiral So Young-han stepped out, followed by medical teams and engineers. She looked around at the damage the aliens had caused, her face grim with determination. Jin-Ho Park walked toward her, still hardly believing this was real. The Admiral was younger than he had expected, but her eyes held the kind of authority that came from making life-and-death decisions in the darkness of space. "Colony Administrator Park," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Admiral Han. I'm sorry it took us so long to get here." Jin-Ho shook her hand, surprised by the strength of her grip. 3 months, he said. "You crossed the galaxy in 3 months. That's not long. That's a miracle." Ow. More ships were landing now, filling the plaza with the sounds of engines and the voices of people eager to help. Medical teams rushed toward the tunnel entrances, carrying supplies and equipment. Engineers began setting up temporary shelters and power generators. But it was the other passengers that made Jin-Ho's heart race with hope. Thousands of new colonists were disembarking from the transport ships. Families and workers who had volunteered to help rebuild New Havana. They had come knowing they might face danger, but they had come anyway. "We brought 10,000 volunteers," Admiral Han explained, following his gaze. "Construction workers, teachers, doctors, engineers, everyone Earth could spare. They all wanted to help." Dr. Song was directing the medical teams toward the most seriously injured colonists when she overheard a conversation between two of the new arrivals. "I can't believe they held out for 3 months," one engineer was saying to another. 50,000 people trapped underground and they never surrendered." "That's what humans do," the other replied. "We don't abandon each other." She smiled. At that, it was exactly what she had been telling her patients for months. Now the entire galaxy would know it was true. Sujinam was helping coordinate the evacuation of the tunnel system when she met one of the new colonists, a young man about her age, who was working with the engineering teams. "What was it like down there?" he asked her, as they worked together to move supplies. She thought about the question for a moment. "Dark," she said finally, "but we had each other, and we knew Earth would come for us eventually." "How could you be so sure?" "Because that's what family does," she replied. "And everyone with a human heart is family." The news of New Havana's rescue spread quickly through the galaxy. Other alien species who had been monitoring the situation began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. The hegemony had been one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Earth had defeated them completely. But it wasn't just the military victory that impressed other species. It was the fact that humanity had traveled across the galaxy. To save a single colony, they'd committed enormous resources and risked a major war to protect 50,000 people they had never met. In the weeks that followed, New Havana was rebuilt stronger than ever. The colony's flag flew proudly above the new administration building, and the memorial to the siege was placed in the central plaza where everyone could see it. The memorial was simple, just a stone monument with the names of those who had died, defending the colony, but above it, visible from anywhere in the settlement, was a smaller version of the flag that had filled the sky on the day of liberation. Children who had been born in the tunnels during the siege played in the plaza. There, laughter echoing off the new buildings. The colony had survived, and it would thrive. Throughout the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity protects its own, no matter the distance, no matter the odds. And anyone who threatened a human colony would face not just local resistance, but the full might of a civilization that had made the stars their home. The siege of New Havana was over. But the legend of Earth's response had just begun.